The Atlanta Hawks have the #1 pick in the 2024 NBA Draft. So what exactly does that mean for Trae Young? And what prospect should they draft to turn things around in Atlanta? Let's get into it. The Hawks had a 3% chance to land the first overall pick, but of course, they got it. But unfortunately, there isn't a Victor Wembanyama, Zion Williamson, or even Paolo Banchero hitting the board ready to turn things around for a franchise in a matter of months. However, you literally never know. Giannis was drafted 15th in 2013. Devin Booker was drafted 13th. Both Draymond and Dennis Rodman were drafted in the second round. Rudy Gobert, a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, was drafted 27th. And Nikola Jokic, the best basketball player in the world right now, was the biggest draft steal ever, being selected 41st. But Alex Sarr could be a future star as well. So it's becoming more clear that the Hawks will select Alex Sarr #1 overall. He's the safest bet in this draft that has the most potential to come in and address the Hawks' weaknesses right away. For one, the Hawks' defense was absolutely terrible. If you want to know why they didn't make it to the playoffs, this is literally the reason why. They ranked 27th in defensive rating and were ranked 25th in paint defense. And the crazy thing is, they were 5th in the NBA in points per game, 3rd in offensive rebounds, and they weren't a terrible three-point shooting team either. And sure, they weren't really that efficient, but my point is that their defense was what was holding them back. Their starting lineup was Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Jalen Johnson, and Clint Capella. And off the bench, they had Patty Mills, DeAndre Hunter, Garrison Matthews, and Onyeka Okongwu. So on paper, while it doesn't seem terrible, it's obvious they don't have three things: an elite defensive stopper, elite rim protector, or multiple high IQ veteran defenders with playoff experience. Every team needs an elite defensive stopper if they want to make it far in the playoffs, or just make it there in general. Look at the Timberwolves. They have some of the best defensive stoppers in the NBA in Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker as well. The Nuggets have Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon and even Christian Brown. The Celtics have Drew Holiday and Derek White. The Cavs have Isaac Okoro. The Thunder have Lou Dort, and the Mavericks have Derrick Jones Jr., who has been elite this year. So, do you see a pattern? All of the top teams have an elite defensive stopper or multiple. DeJounte Murray has never been a defensive stopper. Even in San Antonio, he was a beast off the ball in the passing lanes while still being solid on the ball. However, with the Hawks, he isn't even that good off the ball anymore, which kind of makes him just a shell of his former self on that end. And we know Bogdan or Trae Young aren't stopping anyone, not even you or me. Johnson and Hunter are pretty solid, but they're nowhere near elite enough to contain the best scorers in the NBA on a nightly basis. When it comes to rim protection, they have Okongwu and Capella, but they obviously aren't getting the job done. But to cut them some slack, it's good to mention that usually when you have poor perimeter defenders, it makes the rim protection numbers worse because their perimeter guys keep letting their man just blow by them every other possession, which puts a crazy amount of pressure and responsibility on the rim protectors. And even though they are both good defensive players, they aren't elite, so they don't even have that ability to handle all of that pressure like a Rudy Gobert or Anthony Davis could. Then, of course, Okongwu only played 55 games. But let's be real, it wasn't like the rim protection numbers were going to change even if he played 70. And when it comes to high IQ veteran defenders, they literally have none. Like, seriously, zero. They have no high IQ veteran defensive-minded player on the roster with decent playoff experience. So that's the three biggest problems with their defense: no defensive stopper, no rim protector, or high IQ guys. If I had to choose one to pursue first, it would be going out and getting a rim protector. And in this case, draft one in Alex Sarr. There's a very high chance that he comes into the NBA a better defender than Clint Capella. And most importantly, he'll be much cheaper on that rookie deal, which will give the Hawks more money to fill out the roster. Rim protectors can transform an entire defense. We've seen it time and time again with Walker Kessler, Evan Mobley, Chet Holmgren, Victor Wembanyama, and the list goes on. I think we will be adding Sarr to that list. He's a hyper-athletic shot blocker who can erase shots from anywhere on the floor, similar to a Jaren Jackson Jr. But most importantly, he has tons, and I mean tons of potential when it comes to guarding smaller players. And we all know how important that skill is in today's NBA. The evolution of the game can be traced back to the early 2000s when the rise of small ball and the implementation of pace and space offenses began to change the landscape of basketball. Teams started to prioritize floor spacing, ball movement, and three-point shooting, leading to a decrease in post-up plays and a greater emphasis on perimeter scoring. As a result, traditional centers found themselves increasingly challenged on defense, as they were forced to defend pick and rolls, switch onto guards, and contest shots on the perimeter. This required a level of mobility and lateral quickness that many traditional big men lacked, prompting coaches and front offices to seek out more versatile players who could thrive in the modern game. One of the driving forces behind this shift was the emergence of players like Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, who possessed the size and skill to play multiple positions and create mismatches all over the court. Defending these players effectively requires defenders who can move their feet, switch seamlessly between assignments, and contest shots without fouling. Furthermore, the proliferation of three-point shooting has forced defenses to extend their coverage beyond the paint, placing a premium on big men who can step out onto the perimeter and contest shots effectively. Centers who can protect the rim while also defending the pick and roll and closing out on shooters are highly valued in today's NBA. The importance of mobility on defense is probably most evident in the playoffs, where teams often face off against elite offensive talent and must make strategic adjustments to counter their opponent's strengths. Centers who can adapt to different defensive schemes, switch onto different positions, and cover ground quickly are invaluable assets in playoff matchups. The rise of positionless basketball has blurred the lines between traditional positions, with many teams opting for smaller lineups and employing versatile players at every position. Centers who can move fluidly between the paint and the perimeter, switching assignments, and guard multiple positions are better equipped to thrive in these lineups and contribute on both ends of the court. Look at guys like Chet Holmgren and Evan Mobley. They can easily go from defending on the perimeter to dropping down low in the paint, ready to send a shot away into another arena. Times have changed. Soon, every NBA team will have a center with the build of Holmgren, Mobley, and Wemby. And luckily for the Hawks, they're going to get theirs earlier than most. Offensively, he isn't as glamorous, but there is a lot to work with. For one, he's a monster in transition. With the Wildcats, he averaged 1.5 points per possession in transition, shooting 82%. And as for Trae Young, we know he's one of the best transition facilitators the game has seen in a while. His full court and transition passes have been crazy since he first came into the league. Now with Sarr, we could be witnessing something special. However, most of the game is played in half court, and Trae Young operates mainly out of the pick and roll, something else Sarr thrives at. He still needs some work, but he is a vertical threat who will catch at least 5 lobs from Trae in the first 2 or 3 games guaranteed. He's not an elite shooter, but like we mentioned in our last Alex Sarr video, he has a decent mid-range spot-up jumper and has shown the ability to hit an open 3. It's clear that the future of the Hawks depend on what this young man can turn into on both ends of the floor. And when you actually think about it, the Hawks have not had the best success when it comes to big men. Like, seriously, the search for a standout center in Atlanta dates back to the early years of the franchise, when the team was known as the St. Louis Hawks. Despite enjoying success in the late 1950s and early 60s, winning their only NBA championship in 1958, the Hawks lacked a true dominant center during this era. While players like Bob Pettit and Cliff Hagan were instrumental in the team's success, they primarily played forward positions rather than center. In the 1970s and 80s, the Hawks continued to struggle to find a dominant center. Although they had talented big men like Tree Rollins and Kevin Willis, who had solid careers with the team, they were not considered elite centers in the league. The team experienced some success during this time, making several playoff appearances, but they were unable to advance deep into the postseason without a dominant presence in the middle. The search for a franchise center continued into the 1990s and early 2000s, with the Hawks cycling through various big men in hopes of finding the right fit. Players like Dikembe Mutombo, who had a Hall of Fame career but only spent a few seasons in Atlanta, provided a defensive presence but did not stay with the team long term. Other centers such as Theo Ratliff and Jason Collier showed promise but were unable to stay healthy to reach their full potential. In the mid-2000s, the Hawks drafted promising young center Al Horford, who showcased flashes of elite potential and helped lead the team to several playoff appearances. However, despite Horford's contributions, the Hawks were unable to break through to the elite ranks of the NBA, and he eventually departed in free agency to join the Boston Celtics. In recent years, the Hawks have continued to search for a franchise center, drafting players like John Collins and acquiring Clint Capella via trade, but we see how all that turned out. All in all, it will be interesting to see the direction the Hawks choose to take with Trae Young moving forward. After drafting Alex Sarr, they could move both DeJounte and Capella for really good pieces. However, I wouldn't recommend trading Trae Young. He's a borderline generational point guard who's just 25. But as we all know, he wants to win. And if the Hawks can't construct a team around him for that, then it's only a matter of time until he wants out. That's why this offseason, this draft, is crucial for the Hawks. Like I said, move both Capella and Murray for really good pieces and take it from there. But it all starts with Alex Sarr. What do you think the Hawks should do with their number 1 pick in the NBA draft? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.